Food and nutrition, our most basic of needs, has unfortunately become so complicated, let's call it. But it doesn't need to be that way. My name is Malcolm Saunders, and I've made it my life's mission to help others learn how to find and craft their own food and medicine. And I've always maintained that you do not need a degree to figure out how to feed yourselves and your family. And I get it, as humans, it's definitely been a part of my path. How we learn is sometimes going, way to one side, way to the other, and eventually we kind of find that truth in the middle. And what I want to share with you today is something so simple that I hope will help bring clarity to human nutrition, to the most natural diet that humans are meant to eat. And the landscape of the diet world, nutrition world, is full of kind of controversy and contradictions and opinions and extremes, and very oftentimes the truth is in the middle, in kind of looking at all. And if you've ever been to any of my classes that I teach, in person or online through Lightseller, I'll often bring up this concept, which I want to kind of touch on today and go a little bit deeper into. And this is the idea of the 4 food groups, and not the ones you learned in school, right? Those were, I would say, not very helpful. If we look at our society, our culture, having followed mainstream dietary advice, the results have been less than stellar, not very good. In fact, food writer Michael Pollan says the only reliably bad diet, meaning if you would like to have any of the kind of food and lifestyle related diseases of the day, the so common ones that we can directly link, like diabetes, like heart disease, even cancer, these types of things, just follow the standard American diet, and you're pretty sure to kind of develop some sort of issue. And we can see this across the board, and it's beginning to affect younger and younger people. But if we come back to other cultural diets, literally every other cultural traditional diet around the world, don't care where it's from, there's actually a commonality, and there's something that we can learn from that. And turns out there are, in fact, 4 food groups. We have within there plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. So you can think of these 4 food groups as, the kingdoms of life. Yes, I know technically right now scientists classify them into 6, but generally, you could look at this like plant kingdom, animal kingdom, bacteria kingdom, and the fungi kingdom as food groups. It's literally every single culture around the world throughout time consumes food from all of these food groups. Each one offers something unique, something different, something complementary that the others do not. And what I love about it, this kind of guide, this reference, what I call the natural food guide, the ancestral food guide, it doesn't tell you what to eat, when to eat, or how much to eat. That becomes the individual journey rooted in this kind of grounding, this understanding, because what we consume day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, decade to decade, does change, right? And I'm really big fan of intuitive eating, following your gut more than nutrition trends. Only you know, right, what your body needs in that moment. And it's really, the journey is about becoming in tune with your own body and your own needs, and responding to that in an intelligent way. And I know there are debates. It's like some people are more kind of, and right now I've almost never seen it so polarized in terms of the extremes, right? You have people kind of on this far side that's like, oh no, human, the carnivore diet, we're only meant to eat animal foods. And then on the equal other opposite side, you've got, no, we are vegans, we're only meant to eat plants. We are, essentially they're saying we're herbivores, right? And these are just 2 extremes. And I'm not saying that there's not benefit to going to those edges, going out to that extreme, I, following the path for so many years of vegetarian to vegan, raw vegan, exploring, experimenting with this idea of eating plant foods for a number of years. And then once I was like, whoa, I've actually, initially got some benefits, some results, but something is missing. And I kind of did this pendulum swing back over to the animal food. And a lot of people have experienced that. And it's like, whoa, okay, maybe I'm meant to be carnivore. Maybe you're not, actually, right? Like, yes, there's a ton of value on either side of the spectrum, but it's an and equation. It's plants and animals, and it's each of us finding which foods from these kingdoms that work for our body in that moment. And, herbivores, we're obviously not herbivores, right? Like, nothing about our teeth, our digestive system would suggest that. Same with carnivore, right? Like, our physiology, we're not built to be carnivores. What are we? We are, of course, omnivores, right? Omni, meaning everything. We literally, that's one of the kind of unique things about being a human is we're an omnivore. We get to choose, and there's a whole spectrum, and we might kind of ebb and flow and in and out and drawing from each of these different food sources. And there's nothing wrong with being more on this side, like plant-based or animal-based. It is the base from which your diet has its foundation. It could be like right now, currently where I'm at in the phase of my life and my physiology, like I'm more animal based, not animal exclusive, but animal based for kind of my macronutrients. And then I know about the incredible bounty and offering of the plant foods, in particular herbs, to kind of bring that in and help balance and offset that, along with bacteria and fungi. So let's get into a little bit about what each of these kingdoms offers in its kind of uniqueness, what the others doesn't, and most importantly, kind of a way, an insight into how to optimize your nutrition from each of these kingdoms or food groups. And I'll just say right off the top here, I invite you, just think about for a moment, is there anything outside of these four food groups that humans consume as nutrition, right? Any foods that are not plant, animal, bacteria, or fungi. And of course, bacteria, that would be your fermented foods, your lactobacillus organisms, not only the bacteria themselves, but also the foods that get transformed, be they plant or animal, or fungi that are transformed by bacteria through fermentation or by fungi through fermentation. But fungi is its own food source, medicinal source, involved in fermentation, as well as, macro and micronutrients. Now, there's a lot of edible food-like substances, not talking about those, right, that they're food-like but really aren't natural and don't exist in nature. There is, in fact, of course, other elements that are essential to human nutrition that are outside of this. So this, I call this like the fifth food group, the fifth sacred thing, this idea of literally the elements. So earth, air, fire, water, the most kind of essential and vital, air, breath, oxygen, right? And everything that is absolutely essential, probably the most foundational. There's that saying, how long can you go without food? How long can you go with water? How long can you go without air? Not very long. It's most fundamental. So this is kind of like the fifth food group, which is broken down into its own elements: air, water, of course, right? Earth. So this would be like minerals, like salt, or literally earth, the idea of geophagy, of eating earth, essential to not just human nutrition, but also almost all species. Birds are known to consume clay. Humans, we consume clay. It's something that's maybe not as mainstream or predominant out there, but earth itself, literally from soil and dirt to clays to salts and minerals, absolutely essential part, not a huge part, but an essential part of our diet. And then, that element of fire, heat and temperature, and specifically the sun. We know for sure that we are incredibly reliant, dependent on the sun for our vitality as a direct nutrient source. Other thing I would say about the earth, just thinking about this, is, you know, kind of the electrons that we get from that connection of being barefoot. Absolutely essential. And again, not so predominant in modern culture, but we're just suffering the consequences, not knowing that, not realizing that. So anyways, that I would say kind of covers it. So let me know if there's anything outside of, you know, these 5 core main food groups, but otherwise pretty much everything can be categorized within these 4 food groups. Sometimes there's things that are crossovers, right? Like a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, right? Nature doesn't exist in perfect little boxes. Lichens, you know, they're kind of a combination of plant, fungi, and bacteria. But generally you get the idea of how powerful this can be to understand. So let's go into each of those and what's really going to make the difference in looking at, thinking about how we approach each of these kingdoms and bring them into our diet. And again, this says nothing about you got to be on this side or wherever. This is, you know, that's the intuitive part. That's for you to choose. That's for you to navigate in your own food and nutrition journey. Now, let's start down here, you know, the underside, the deeper belly of, you know, bacteria, fungi. Commonly, we don't think of these as food sources, food groups that are essential, but it has been observed, it has been proven that every single human culture around the world consumes fermented foods, right? Foods, be they plant or animal or fungal, that have been transformed by bacteria, yeast through fermentation. Now, it's critical that we as humans consume live cultured ferments. So ferments in the form you can consume as live culture, so you're going to get living bacteria that are introduced to your system, become part of your own microbiome, and that's key, that's essential. So that could be things like yogurt, that could be things like kombucha, that could be things like you know, cheeses, you name it. There's an absolute plethora out there of cultural, traditional, fermented foods and beverages that we can consume. Now, you're also going to consume fermented foods that have been cooked. So there's that living element, getting in the living bacteria. So, you know, unheated, non-pasteurized ferments. But then in the case of things like tempeh or sourdough bread or, you know, you name it, where that fermented food then gets cooked, it's no longer living, but it has still been transformed by bacteria, and there's a ton of benefit to consuming such fermented foods, but just make sure you're also including living ferments, living bacteria. And if you want to learn how to ferment your own food, this is something that I have been teaching for years and years and years. So through Light Cellar, if you go to the page right now, you'll see classes available to you, both recorded previous sessions that you can just, you know, watch anytime on a number of different topics, you know, fermentation for herbalists, introduction to fermentation, as well as fermented food and beverage classes. So definitely key, essential. If you're not on the fermentation train, either consuming them and or making them yourself, then yeah, this will actually, you know, makes such a big difference. I like to say, do nothing else about your diet. Eat what you eat. Don't change a thing. Just add in live culture ferments and your health will improve. 99 times out of 100, there's the odd time that it does not work for somebody. That becomes a whole other issue to explore. It may be, you know, gut issues, intestine permeability, histamine issues, and if that's the case, then there's avenues for you to take. I would say there's not a single kind of challenge or condition health-wise that cannot be solved. There's no problem without a solution. It's all out there. So if that's you, just let me know and we can kind of send you off in the right way. Otherwise, get starting fermenting your own food. Fungi, you know, humans have relied on fungi both as food and medicine for millennia, right? Some of the Oats of the Iceman. I was going to say, you know, one of the oldest, most well-preserved humans that we have been able to study had several different species of fungi on his person that he was using, medicinally. And we know that humans, there's this, just like with bacteria, with fungi, with yeast, there is this relationship that is essential to us. And of course, there are things like, button mushrooms that you can get in the grocery store. Now with the rise of medicinal mushrooms and in the role that they're beginning to play, or shall I say have always played, but we're just kind of re-exploring and re-honoring and prioritizing. Incredible. But the fungi kingdom, right? Even in our kind of modern medicine, so much of it is rooted, based in like penicillin, right? The fungal kingdom. So it's not just food, but it's also medicine. And if you want to learn more, again, this is an area that we deep dive into. Every year we do a fermentation festival. Every year we do a mushroom symposium, right? To go deeper into these kingdoms. And the Medicinal Mushroom Symposiums, typically do them in March each year. We've got past recordings available. We've got the new one coming up. And it's a whole spectrum of fungi getting into, things like the medicinal mushrooms or the psilocybin mushrooms, right? The magic mushrooms and the kind of the positive beneficial effects they can have on one's spiritual, emotional, mental well-being, but then also that physical side. We'll get into the culinary side, the growing side, a number of different experts talking about fungi. They have a role in human diet and human nutrition. Plant kingdom, pretty obvious, of course. We can get macronutrients from plants, and we can also get a lot of micronutrients, a lot of phytonutrients, these plant nutrients that some of the carnivores will say, oh, those are just defense chemicals, those are toxic. Hey, sometimes the medicine is a poison and it's just about dose. So I think the plant kingdom, clearly, obviously has so much to offer us. It's why I'm not in the I'm a carnivore type camp. It's clearly we're not carnivores. We utilize plant nutrition as both food and medicine. And so my suggestion here is you get into the world of plants, yeah, sure, diversify what you eat from the plant kingdom, but think of it, really turn to it, look to it as, a first form, original form of medicine. And this is the idea of being your own herbalist. And I've just seen a big shift, a resurgence, just like we've seen a kind of a revival back to fermentation, a real interest back into fungi, exploring the world of herbs and empowering each one of us to be our own herbalist. Again, not to replace modern medicine, it's got its own role, but every single traditional culture around the world had its own form of plant medicine, right? So herbalism, as a friend of mine defines it, is just the institutionalization of wild food intuition, right? Tuning into the local landscape and what are these plants and the effects, their benefits on their body. And this is something that we can learn. We can learn through experience. We can learn through book learning. We have access to a whole spectrum of all different types of herbal traditions that we can start our own journey. Not to say that you need to become a herbalist, you're going to give consults and you're going to be the most knowledgeable expert in the world. Hey, if that's your path, awesome. Some people are on that path and on that journey, but for most it's just about, hey, I would really love to know how to treat simple things, how to avoid, how to bring this empowerment of plant medicine into my home, for myself, for my family. That is 100% available to you. And that's, again, something that we really offer and explore here, whether it is wild plant walks. So you want to learn what is out in the local ecosystem, come join us on the plant walk. We'll show you, right? Introduce you to this beautiful, wonderful, lifelong path of interacting with the local environment, for food and for medicine, and having that understanding. We do a plant medicine making workshop, right? All the different ways you can prepare herbs, be it teas, tinctures, salves, syrups, you name it. We'll explore that with you. And another one that is more related to kind of plant nutrition and medicine is the idea of elixir crafting. And again, each of those courses are available kind of as recorded or live in-person sessions. Go to lightseller.ca, take a look. You'll see pick a date and a time that works for you. So we got elixir crafting one. We really go into this idea of becoming your own herbalist, how to start, where do you get into that, and how do you begin incorporating them? Because the single most important thing about herbs, and 80 herbalists will tell you, is that herbs don't work unless you take them, right? Compliance is key. And so the elixir crafting is about strategies to bring those herbs into your everyday. Animal foods, again, this doesn't say that you have to eat beef or chicken or drink milk or eat eggs or whatever, right? It's like the animal food kingdom is, as vast as the others in terms of all the choices, where we really get to customize our own diet and deep dive into what works for our own body. And, key things that we want to think about, with animal foods is the whole animal. So much of our culture is based around, I'm just going to have chicken breasts. I'm just going to have, thighs. I'm just going to eat muscle meat. And, there's a stigma around, bones and organs, like, that's poor people's food or whatever. That's come from the past. And for the longest time, humans moved away from those most essential components of the animal. And great, there's a resurgent back to, recognizing the value of organ meats. Doesn't mean you need to become liver king and eat, liver 3 times a day. I think that's a bit excessive. But it should, at some way, at some level, have a role in your diet. And again, that's going to change. Looking at traditional cultures, they recognized, that, preconception and the gestation period, for a mother and birthing, and even the father, like how key and essential certain foods like organ meats were to that stage of life. So I get it, I was a vegetarian for a long time. I wasn't raised eating organ meats, and I had to really kind of dive into that, retrain myself, mental shift, palate, and learn how to consume those. So that's one course that we have is what I call Beyond the Capsule. Great. A lot of us will start by incorporating, liver, for instance, in the form of a capsule, just to kind of experiment, feel it out. It's one of those things. It's like, boom, you notice it. The level of energy, the level of vitality that these super nutrient-dense foods offer is undeniable. And where people get hung up is like, okay, capsules, great, but how do I actually make this food and a part of my everyday? So that's a course that talks all about that, broths, getting into, meat stocks, bone broths, that kind of thing. Also a key area to learn and understand. And so that's really the main takeaway for animal foods is, hey, whatever you're into, whatever works for your body, and you really need to think about and focus on the whole animal. So nutrition, once you get it, it's simple. You don't need a degree to figure this out. It may take some time just because of where we're starting, and culturally we don't have a really good foundation. What we have, we've seen the results of. I spent a long time, very confused about food and nutrition, exploring this, reading books, going down rabbit holes, and I'm grateful to say that I'm now here in a really kind of solid place where trends can come, this can come, information, and I'm not fazed by it. It's like I know exactly how to eat, I know how to nourish myself now, but it wasn't always that way. We do need to put in the time, the focus, the effort, and when we get there, it's so worth it. It's so good to have that foundation of good health, and it's a lot of fun to be able to learn about food and nutrition, integrate, getting into the world of herbs, getting into ferments, right? It's the learning, it's the application, be it wild foraging, be it preparing your own ferments, this kinds of things at home, developing that relationship with fungi, and the results, the health that comes as a result speaks for itself. So thanks for tuning in today. I really hope that you learned something, you got some insights from this, and the invitation is there. This is kind of the foundation of what Light Cellar is about, helping you learn how to find and craft your own food and medicine. So I really welcome you to join us along this journey. Number of different ways to stay in touch is through the social media, right? Like the YouTube and the Instagram, and then this and that. Definitely get onto our newsletter, and then join us for a class. Whether you live in the Calgary area and you can join us live in person, or you're outside of that and you could able to tune in online, live, or we have have these recorded versions as well. Want to thank you for tuning in, and yeah, look forward to supporting you on your journey.